I remember once driving with my family through a mountain pass in Switzerland. I experienced something that I had not experienced before. There was a sudden fog, very thick fog, that reduced the visibility to just a few feet in front of the car. And it was quite a scary thing because mountain roads, the fog was thick. If you suddenly stop, cars behind will knock into you. You have to carry on, hoping that you won't knock into another car or fall off a cliff. It is quite scary. So we were praying. I knew that all of our lives depended on how I drove. And then suddenly the fog lifted. Very quickly, just lifted, and it became so clear. The sun was shining and we were so relieved. It's just a moment when the fog disappeared and light appeared. I like to remember that kind of situation when we read a text like today's text in Luke chapter 2. The world was in a thick fog, and then heaven opened and suddenly light appeared. It's the same thing that the Apostle John also describes. He says, light came into the darkness. And so we remember this event of the incarnation, of how God broke through the thick fog of darkness and gloom. One of the things that you will notice if you read the nativity texts, as we call it, in Luke's Gospel, in Matthew's Gospel, is that the main character of the texts is God. Remove God from the picture, the texts don't mean very much. It's just sentimental, Christmassy stuff. But the central character is God. A God who was so keen to get through to us in whatever way He could use. He used the stars, He used the shepherds, He used the wise men. He used all that was available to Him. And so here we find that the shepherds who were there doing their routine work of looking after the sheep, suddenly God broke through that fog and they saw angels. They saw the light. They heard choirs singing, angelic choirs singing. And the angels appeared with a message from God. And they sang, and the dark night air was shattered by the glorious light and the glorious voices. Earlier, angels had appeared to Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, and to Mary, the mother of Jesus. In Matthew's Gospel, angels appeared to Joseph and to the wise men. So it looked like heaven opened the door widely so that there could be this communication between a God who was very keen to get through to people and the earth that was filled with fog and darkness. God was very keen to get through to the people. But the greatest breakthrough in this whole story is the birth of the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, who came to earth in an amazing way. It's mind-boggling. It was the turning point in history because God Himself visited the earth. The shepherds found this Christ. They had an amazing experience. They were just doing their routine work. Suddenly, heaven broke loose. Sometimes we use the word hell broke loose. But this time it's the reverse. Heaven broke loose. And heaven opened its doors. And suddenly they were filled with the light of God and the glory of God and a wonderful message of the good news of Jesus Christ. They saw with their own eyes God breaking through into the dark mists of human history. And God had broken through, of course, in the Old Testament to Old Testament characters like Moses, like Samuel, like David, like the prophet Isaiah. But this time, God broke through in a very decisive and altogether significant way. In his book, The Life of God in the Soul of Man, this great book written by Henry Scougal, the 17th century Scottish minister, he said this: God hath long contended with the stubborn world and thrown down many a blessing upon them. And when all his other gifts could not prevail, he at last made a gift of himself, the indescribable gift, as the New Testament puts it. And so the shepherds heard all this, and they were terrified. Naturally, they were terrified. And then the message is, do not be afraid. It was a spine-chilling and soul-shattering experience. But when God gets through to us, sometimes it feels like that.